Welcome to the Forward Iron Podcast. We're here to help men understand their biblical roles, pursue Christ with unwavering courage in every aspect of their lives. Welcome to the Fort. Welcome back to the Forward Iron Podcast, y'all. I'm here with Jeremy and Jason. So, what's going on, guys? How y'all doing? As usual, we're going to start here with Ephesians 1:5. In love, having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. That's the topic here. Same one as the last 3 weeks, talk about adoption, fostering. You know, it's Foster Child Awareness Month here. Got our annual Cason Memorial Weekend coming up here. Looking forward to seeing you guys out in person. That's going to be fun, hanging out, celebrating the life of Cason. It's going to be a good time. But this is the final installment of our adoption series podcast. We're just going to tell our stories. I know you heard a little bit of mine with Travis. You've heard a little bit of Jason's here and there. I know, Gunny, you probably shared yours somewhere. Either way, they're all going to be all consolidated here tonight. So without further ado, here we go. Falling into this is not for the faint of heart. It is something that it should be on everybody's heart. And even when it's on someone's heart who can't do it financially, can't do it because of whatever circumstances, there's always ways to help out. Like Carl said in the last podcast, you know a family who is doing this, see what you can do to help them out. Maybe it's a meal. Maybe it's a thing of formula or something. Or maybe it's the kid at church who's reaching out for a mentor. There's something we can do for the fatherless, for the orphans. So anyway, here,
sure.
Jason, you want to kick it off with
first off,
story?
My wife and I,
where you started with it?
we never planned to adopt. We never planned to foster. Wasn't against it, just didn't really know much about it and never really had thought about it. We moved to West Texas. I'm bad with dates. 8-10 years ago, something like that. And actually, it's probably more like 10 or 12 years ago. And we ended up having a company down there, having several employees, and actually had an employee that was from Arkansas, Central Arkansas here, one of a few that we had. And some things happened, and one thing or another, they asked us to watch Cason for a temporary moment while the mother went through some therapy stuff. The state allowed that to happen, so we were already on the books. And then so later when they ended up taking Cason from his parents, we were either given the opportunity to let us take him, or he was going to go into the state foster care system. So the father just pleaded with us to take him because they knew that we would take care of him while they tried to get him back. Fast forward through a year of all that, and during all that, we become foster care certified. You have to do that before you can adopt. And their rights were terminated. And at that point, we had a choice, which was no choice at all for us, but either to adopt or let him go into a system. And that's how we ended up adopting Cason. That's the very short version of it. But it was not planned. It was just something that kind of happened. But so grateful for God allowing that to happen. It's absolutely changed our lives in so many ways. But yeah, that's the short version of our story. Gunny, you want to give yours?
Yeah. Just kind of want to echo what Cody talked about it not being for the faint of heart. Sitting here on this podcast talking about it and knowing that my two little ones are about to go to bed and wake up tomorrow for their last day of school, of kindergarten in fourth grade or third grade, just listening to Jason talk and knowing that I'm going to tell my story has already, my heart's already beating in my chest. And so I'm just going to tell you, knowing that and having gone through the process, you never think that you would ever adopt. You just don't think it's not something that would be naturally someone saying, hey, I want to grow up and I'm going to adopt some kids. A lot of different stories out there. There's a lot of different ways that you can come about it. But for the most part, I really feel like most of the stories that I've heard, and including the one I'm about to tell you, there is so much of God's hand in every single story when it comes to adoption. Growing up like I did, being a coach and stuff like that with Jeremiah and all his buddies, they'd come stay the night and stuff like that. And you ever hear, mom's adopting your son's best friend and things like that, just kids that come around and you care about them. Your heart goes out to them when you see kids that are being bullied or things like that, and your heartstrings are pulled. But when it comes to something like this is a permanent thing. This is not, they can come stay the night as many times as they want. This is I am going to adopt this kid and they are going to be my own. And it's amazing. And so to tell you a little bit about my story, we came across adoption in kind of a weird way. So my wife and I, when we got married, we found out within months that she was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer. And right at the beginning of our marriage, it was just a direct blow to our future plans. And when it came to kids, and God putting his hand on her and, making her a survivor of that is one thing. But then turning around after she fought through that, and we talked about adopting kids, and we decided to do it, just the story and the way of the steps that were taken leading up to that it's overwhelming, guys. It really is. God every step of the way, I promise. But what we did is, when we decided that we wanted to be ready, just like Jason said, we adopted Jazz and Jonah through Family Protective Services. And there were a bunch of different options that we looked at. We looked at some places kind of like Soaring Wings in Arkansas, but around here in Texas, there were a few that we looked at. We went to a couple seminars and looked at some of the Christian ones around here. Of course, all of them, for some reason, are really expensive. And our heart just led us to Family Protective Services. And of course, we had to go through classes. I think it was like almost three months, going 2 or 3 times a week, 3 hours a night, just going through all the classes and learning about fostering and things like that, and what we had to look forward to, good and bad. Finishing all that and still just with eyes wide open to what God's going to do with it. Man, our hearts were broken. And I want to tell you that part of the story is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You don't just go and sometimes God will put the kids in your lap. But in our instance, we had to go to a website. And when we graduated those classes, they asked us to do a family profile that they would send out and to get matches for us. And of course, it's just like going on a computer and you're basically selling yourself to adopt a child. So we made one of those, and they sent it out a couple places. And when they gave us the TARE website, which is the Texas Adoption Resource Exchange, it's a weird feeling. So you're basically going online and you're shopping for kids. And it's weird to even say that. But what you're doing is you're trying to find a match, right? And you're just going off their little stories and kind of what you're looking for, what's going to fit your family. And when I got on that website, gentlemen, you want to talk about a broken heart? There were over 1,000 kids on that website just for the state of Texas, but just for that website. And there's like 5 websites, and it was heartbreaking, but even more so, it was hard to filter because we were going through there, and I would probably say 96 to 97% of those kids were special needs kids. And it just broke our heart. And what ended up happening is we never found the kids on that website. It just, we couldn't do it. We couldn't bring ourselves to go on there and see these kids. Not being adopted and being on there, it would show how long they were on the website and things like that. And so that's where God put his hand in and just said, okay, well, if you can't do that, well, then I'm going to bring you to. And what happened is the Family Protective Services sent out our profile, and they found a match for us. But we specifically told them that we only wanted to foster to adopt. So we wanted to have a kid on there. That's right. I said one because we were only looking to adopt one. But a brother and sister fell in our lap, and we fell in love with them. But we asked them to please make sure that the parental rights were terminated, because we just didn't have the heart to deal with courts and going back and forth if we fostered a kid, because their number one purpose in the courts is to reunite those kids with their original parents. And it's so hard on your heart when you pray over it and pray over it and pray over it, that you're actually, wanting things to work out for God's will and God's will alone. Because you don't feel right going, now, please have these parents' rights terminated. You don't want to pray about something like that. But you want what's best for the kids in all the situations. And so you really you pray for God's will. And I tell you, man, if it is his will that those kids were with us, man, we ended up with them after a very, very long and lengthy 4 to 6 months of living on pins and needles, that they might go back to bio parents. But it didn't happen that way, and we were able to adopt them in June, and it was amazing. And I'll tell you right now, I can't even remember what my life was like before them. So it was awesome, very, very good.
Yeah, so you said something there that I wanted to bring back up, would be going through and looking at that website and seeing that. Like, how many of us see that constantly when we're not looking, to adopt, we're not looking to foster, but we just see the issues like going on. This is just a segue into, Christian men need to stand up and quit being turds. Because we see it in the church like that. But the same with us, though. Like you said, going. You didn't want to deal with the courts. Is we're not really dealing with the court system, but we're having to wait on it, and sitting there like, God, is this your will? What am I waiting on? Why are you taking so long? Well, why did you let them, have this baby in the first place? Those are all questions that have popped into my head. And the state of South Carolina, they do, like Travis was saying, family reconciliation is like their big thing. So it's kinship guardianship. The wife just corrected me. So it is constantly, they could take our child out of our home right now, because technically we're just fostering them right now. Obviously we want to adopt them, and since everything's open, I'm leaving names out of this, but they could call us tomorrow and he have to go. And I promise you, I would be devastated, heartbroken for that. You guys know how much this baby means to me.
So when y'all, because I know Jason and both of you have went through this, and I don't know if this is a question for your wives, and maybe I will talk to them about this in June, or I will talk to them about this, but did it ever feel hard to bond with these children?
Most definitely. Now,
So
not
that's
with
a normal feeling?
not with Jazz, because she was only 18 months old, but with Jonah, most definitely. He was. We had a hard time for a year bonding with that kid, and then all of a sudden,
And I think
clouds parted, and God reached down and just said, "Hey." I think he just calmed Jonah's heart. He just said, "Listen, I know you're used to going from here to there to here to there to here to there, and you don't think that this is permanent, but these are your parents." And when he finally realized that, everything changed.
Connected child book 3 weeks before I lost Case, and it finally connected, and he finally started breaking. Yes, it was, but depending on how much trauma they have, which Kaysen had trauma before we got him, and I'll just say it, I gave him a hell of a lot more for multiple reasons. I did not want to break his heart, and if you read, I did everything wrong. I did. I didn't want to break his heart, because what if he stays with us and then he goes back, and now he's connected with us, and we're ripping him apart, and that's wrong. That's wrong. But I wouldn't open myself up to him, so I made things worse. I actually deepened wounds, and so then it was connected. It was connected child doing things completely abnormal to a normal childhood, giving him a spoon of peanut butter at night, and letting him have a yes basket, where there's a basket full of fruit on the side of the table, and it doesn't matter what you do. If you come and ask me for that fruit, no matter what time of day or night, the answer is always going to be yes in that basket, but you have to ask me. And just all these little things. And then it was like 3 weeks before he passed, he just opened up, cracked. We were singing in the tractor together. I'm like, "Where have you been all this time?" And he just laughed and smiled at me. He's like, "I've been here all the time," and just bobbing his head. And yes, it was extremely hard for us. But God gave me that little one day, knowing I needed it.
And we've prayed for this baby, and we wanted him for so long. And I guess this could be a mom thing, because I feel like Cody's been okay with bonding with him. But, and like you said, Jason, maybe in the back of my mind, like, I'm not allowing myself to open up and to get wholeheartedly into loving this child because I'm scared. But at the same time, like, even with Everly, our second child, when we had her, Graceland was easy to bond with because she was the first child. You're overwhelmed. You're like, oh, ooh, ah, ooh, God, blah, blah, blah. But then when Everly came along, like, I felt like it was a little bit harder for me to bond with her. But with Jax, it's like there's a wall.
You'll break. He'll break you one day. I
have a wall up.
He'll look at you just the right way.
Or maybe I don't know why I have.
He'll look at you and just puppy dog eyes.
I don't need no, like, crazy, right?
No, Leanne, it's self-preservation is what that is, because deep down in your heart of hearts, you are afraid, that it could happen, that they could get the phone call and he'd be gone. And so we felt like that for the longest time. And I know you haven't heard me tell this story, but their parents were in jail, and the court was still trying to reunite, because that's, the way it goes. But they were, in jail for beating these kids severely, you know what I mean? And neglect. They were in jail for neglect. And we just knew that there couldn't be a way that it could happen where they were going to go back with these parents. And every time we had a court proceeding, it was like, you got to be kidding me. And they would appeal and appeal, and how is any judge not just going, absolutely not. But because we knew that was their goal, I had that feeling, and I know my wife did too. I mean, they were here, but when they were here before we actually, through the court, legally adopted them, we were fostering them. And so we couldn't pour our heart all the way out. And so when you can't pour your heart all the way out when you're trying to raise a child in your home, they feel that, you feel that, and that's where that wall comes from.
And I feel like he can sense
that's exactly how I felt, exactly how I was like, I think they know that this might not work out. You know what I mean? Especially with what he had been through. But it was very difficult for us until we were, and not to say that we were acting any kind of different. It was different,
No, and I don't feel like I'm trying to be different like with him than I am with my own kids. But like you said, it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just different. And, like, I just want to make sure it was normal, I guess, to feel that way and to, but yeah, it's like he feels my pain almost.
Yeah, it's part of it.
You'll be all right. It'll go away.
It actually is.
That's the only thing that makes me feel a little bit safe. I just need to pray about bonding with this child because I feel like he can feel that I'm just not.
Well, I'll tell you this too. On the other side of that, Leanne, is even though through the court, both parents' rights are terminated, they are legally ours. We even took the extra step and paid the money to change their social security numbers. We changed their names. Those were not their names. And to this day, as I'm looking you in the eye right now, I am still so afraid that they're going to get their act together, get out of prison, get out of jail, and come look.
I had a emergency phone call, which
it's scary.
Y'all know. I apologize about it, didn't I? So I got a call from the biological dad's brother, which we're good friends. Casey's grandmother's adopted me as a new son. I mean, we're family. She treats me better than my mom, which isn't hard to do. Anyway, we get a phone call from the brother. Hey, by the way, he's in town. I don't know how he got out of Texas. He's got a rap sheet in 5 states, and they all want him. But yeah, he got out of Texas. He's in Arkansas. He's headed your way. Well, I'm in Greenbrier, 25 minutes from the house. I had to make a mad dash to the house, call Lane, get up here, and it's I knew it was coming. It took almost 3 years, but he shows up out here at my house. So. But the thing is he didn't come violently or anything. He just came because he wanted to see the grave. He wanted to talk to me and tell me thank you, and not to have any hard feelings. So you can't worry about all that. God's in control.
Well, and I know that God has had this whole situation in his hands because I'm telling you, I have prayed, I've cried, I've screamed. I said, God, this is not your will. Don't let it happen. Shut the door, slam it, let the tire blow out. I don't care. And he's here. So, I mean, there's that. Anyways, sorry for interrupting. I just had to, just get some advice from the people that I look up to.
Where are we at?
All right. For those of y'all listening on audio, seems like it just skipped ahead. That's because it did. Had a minute for some advice time with the wife, and as she said, to the 2 men she looks up to. So we had to do a little editing there. But coming in, just kind of going back to where we were talking about with us and our process of going through this. Just our story on it was, I'm sitting at work one day, and Leanna calls me. She said, hey, I did something. Normally that's, hey, I spent $200 at a boutique or something, But she goes into telling me, hey, so our nephew had a baby in this situation. And in my head, I'm already thinking, we're about to go to Louisiana and get a kid. And she was like, I told him we'd take the baby. And then she goes on to tell me, the baby's in state custody now. So born with drugs in the system, mommy and daddy both drugs in their system, that whole ordeal without giving too many of the details there. So by the time we get this information and Leanna calls me and we're trying to figure things out, he's already in foster care for the state. So having to go through that, and the process after that was for us to get home study done, get established as foster parents, just as Gunny and Jason had said earlier. And now it took us almost a year, almost right at a year. So he was born May of last year, and we ended up getting him over here in March of this year. So right at a year of dealing with the state system to get him here. But now that he is here, it's very unlikely that he will leave. Talking about the termination of parents' rights, that is something that we're waiting on. And like Gunny said, it's a hard thing to pray for, because you really break it down. That kid that's back there asleep right now, he's my great nephew. And how do I pray to take my nephew's son away, but not also pray for my nephew to get his crap together so he can be the father that I tell you guys to be, that I tell other Christian men to be? There's a weird dichotomy there that tears at the soul. Trying to keep the tears.
That's very true. That's very true. So take your time. That's something that I'm sure all three of us have struggled with. And it's something that even still, and we kind of just talked about that in the break, was just, our process was a year and a half, and, I know they're not grown. I told you that they're only 9 and 6, but that I still pray, that this is going to be continuing in God's will. And that's just the prayer that you have to keep at your forefront in your heart, is that you just pray that it's God's will be done.
Yeah. That's all any of us can really pray anymore. And especially with these type of situations. So the mother of our child here, she saw him when he was born, and immediately he had meth in his system. They recognized that from some of the issues that he had, upon arrival, and he went to the NICU, and that's the last time that the mother has seen him. And the process would be so easy, so quick to get done if they could get in touch with these two. But they're nowhere to be found, and I don't know how someone can look at a child, especially one that they created, and say, I don't love you, I don't want you. And then, as we've heard foster stories, the biological parents come around years later. Oh, well, we want to be a part of your life, or we want to do that. Like, I don't understand the switch. The only switch I can think of would be Jesus, would be a complete, the old is gone and you're a new creation. That's the only thing I can think of to make that switch. But it is such a hard thing on the foster parents, the adoptive parents, the child itself. That's something that personally I'm trying to prepare for now. Like, he is a year old, and I'm trying to prepare for the talk of, hey, I'm not your real dad. Your real dad's, my nephew. Your mom, I have no clue who she is. Like, I'm trying to prepare for that. And that's just one of the things, I guess, going into our next little section is the how-tos of it. Like, how do you love this child? How do you make them part of the family, accept them that way. The only thing, that I found is reverting, how can God love me? How can I know what type of horrible person I've been, the type of things that go through my head. And God still sent his son to die for me so he could bring me into his family, that I'm no longer a son of disobedience, but an heir to the kingdom. So those verses and those doctrines like that is what's been keeping me going through this process.
Yeah. And you said something there too, Cody, about, how we talked about how hard it is to pray, but, you asked, you didn't know how someone can have a child and not want them, you know what I mean? And on the other side of that too, and I'll kind of tell a little bit about, how we got Jonah and Jazz and how that came about, how they came about for adoption. And it's one of those stories that on the other side of what you're talking about is we thought that same thing, but I go back to, and it's going to sound weird, but the story of Moses. I mean, Moses' real mother, was trying to save him. And what was her name? Jochebed was the mother that put him in a basket. And, you would think, man, why would someone do that to their baby, their newborn baby? But sometimes there are people in this world that realize that they cannot raise this child, that child would be better off somewhere else. And they think that. And so you think, what she did is she put, the baby in the basket, and he ended up with Pharaoh, and the rest of the story. So that's kind of on the other side of that. And we came across that with, when we found these two kids and we read about their story and the questions that we asked about it, it just broke our hearts. So Jonah, he was 2 years old. His parents were big into drugs. They were at a party that they had at a motel, and they both, drugged out, passed out, whatever. And 2-year-old Jonah walked out of the room, walked across the 6-lane highway, and police found him in a convenience store, just opening up food and eating it. And he was in a diaper. And they were able to kind of track back to where he was at. They found the parents, and obviously they went to jail for it, and he ended up in foster care. Well, just like we said before, the court, the mom got out first, and they put him back with her. And it was only under the precept that the dad was not to be around him. Well, she broke that within 2 weeks of him getting out. And she became pregnant with Jazz. And fast forward, they had gotten in trouble one more time, and they were both kind of like another time would have been like lifetime imprisonment. But I think it was CPS that was telling them, you cannot have these kids around him, and if you do, we're going to take the kids away from you. And she violated that, and the time that she did, Jazz was, oh my gosh, I think she was only like maybe 16 months old at the time, and he ended up beating the mom and choking her in front of Jonah and beating up Jazz. And they were both so high on drugs that they took the kids to daycare the next day, all beat up, and didn't even realize it. And of course, they get CPS called on them, and that's how they ended up in foster care. And so when you talk about how do you pray for someone like that, we've done it, brother. Krista and I have been on our knees, just knowing the pain that is in their hearts for what they've done, hoping that they have remorse, but knowing that they might be somewhere behind bars right now, having a whole life of regret that they don't have those children anymore. But my prayer is that some way, somehow, that God would ease their pain and calm their hearts and have them know somehow that those 2 kids are in good hands. And it's the hardest thing to do.
I can kind of share a little bit of our story as well. I mean, we did the same thing. And I mean, as hard as it is, I mean, you think about the story of, the Apostle Paul and his conversion story and stuff. And I mean, who's to say that the parents of our children can't be like that we adopt? Fast forward to now, and I wouldn't say we have a strong relationship with either one of them. We will talk to them occasionally, but the mother actually reaches out to my wife, 6, 8 times a year anyway. She has, God revealed himself to her, and she has been saved, and she's a different woman. I've actually got to meet her. She came out here face to face. She goes into the prison, has a prison ministry now for women who are on drugs and stuff. So just completely different. And she credits that. That's and awesome. I'm going to say this. She credits that to us, but we have to credit it to God, because God allowed to use us through this situation. And, it obviously didn't end up in our family like we had thought it would be. After losing Casey in a 4-wheeler accident almost 3 years ago, it wrecked us. But we have sat back and watched God's hand, and knowing that He is sovereign and everything. Just so many people have come to us and have been touched through the story of Casey's life. And that's all you can do, is you can pray that you're doing the right thing and God's will be done, whatever that is, even if it unfortunately is taking your child that He gives you to. But yes, you have to pray for His will, even for the parents.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, it is. But like you said, God's hand's in it. I feel like every adoption story I've heard, it's man, every single person that talks about their adoption story is, man, God this, God that, and it's true. It is so true. So if you're listening to this, just know, from coming from three guys that have experienced it, if you're looking to adopt, or if you have adopted, God's hand is very much in it. And just think about the situation that we were in, where Krista had to have her hysterectomy and couldn't have children, and look at the blessings that God put in front of us and in our lives now. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, going through the Vodi Bakum book, family driven faith, that's one of the things he was talking about, was that families, especially in Western culture now, it's like 1, 2 kids max, man-to-man coverage is how he described it, is what's the norm. It goes, when the norm used to be 6, 7, 8 kids per family. And, that was, after reading that was something that was never my goal, and probably one of my biggest regrets. That absolutely, like, that should have been my thought process, is going through that. And immediately started feeling guilty, because, I chose to have a vasectomy. But a few chapters later, he's talking about it, that, medical issues should be the only reason that, Christian parents stop having kids. And so I guess that to go all the way back to the beginning of how even the thought process of fostering or adoption came into the Palmer household was, Gracie was born 8 weeks early, emergency C-section, almost killed Leanna. It was a horrible situation. 18 months later, here comes Evie. Same thing. And the doc he asked me the question no dad wants to hear. Well, you want your wife or the baby? You better come out of there with both of them, or you're leaving here same way she is. No. But anyway, so with that was the reason that me and her, vasectomy, not what, tube times? Is that what it's called? had that done. And, you know, 2 girls, and me being how I am, it's like, I wanted a son. I wanted to keep going, you know, after that. And so that had been something that we had talked about, you know, was adopting and this stuff. And then it, you know, it happened, just came into our lap, total God thing. Like you said, everybody's got that story. And our God story is Christmas this past year. Jason knows the story. He was there for it. We are trying, hey, we're going to be on that side. Can we meet the foster mom? Can we do this? No, we've gotten 0 contact from anyone within the state, from the foster parent that our baby was with. Hadn't heard nothing in months. And we go out there's a spot out on Jason's land where we all go and pray. And
it was less than 3 hours later.
Yeah. What was it, Jason? An hour, 2 hours? Less than 3 hours. They're calling us, hey, if you're on this side of the country, why don't you come on down and meet the baby? We left the next morning. And a lot of driving for me, but it was just one of those things that was like, hey, God, like, we're getting no answers. Your will, not ours, but can you give us something, just a little nibble of something good or bad? Just let us know one way or another. And then there it was, you know, hey, y'all come meet the baby. We meet the foster mom, and she was amazing. And just step after step, like Gunny said, you know, you see God's hand. It's like, even when we're sitting there and like we're past impatience, we're past waiting, and it's like on the verge of just giving up. It's like, here's just a little bit, y'all. Just enough. That's all you need. Keep trusting me. And it's amazing to watch God work in real time like that.
Most definitely, man. Most definitely. And I know, too, even afterwards, the first year was the toughest with ours. Of course, Jazz, she was so young. We were pretty much all she knew, so she was easy. But Jonah had that trauma, you know, and he remembered a lot of it. Specifically his time in foster homes, believe it or not. So yet another side of this is there were a lot of people that were in the foster system, that they fostered kids that weren't there because they loved kids. They were there, unfortunately, because they get paid money to take care of kids, and they got paid for the amount of kids they had. And it was unfortunate that Jonah had to go to some of those homes. When we first met them, we had to drive about an hour and a half away to meet them. And they drove up in a 16-passenger bus, van, whatever you want to call it. And these foster parents were upwards of 60 years old, and they had 9 kids in that van, ranging from 16 months old to 14 years old. And they all looked like they were pretty unhealthy. And that was just one more thing that we just wanted to get him as quick as we could, just to get him out of that situation. But the first year with him, with his memory and the trauma that he had, we had our ups and downs for sure. But it just came down to him one day just deciding to trust. And it took everything we had to show him that he could trust us. And he had a lot of backlash. A lot of things that they teach you in those classes that you go to actually happens. It's actually true. We would come home sometimes with toys and buy him, crayons and toys and stuff like that. And we'd leave him a little time in the room. And, we'd come back 15, 20 minutes later, and he would be in the closet snapping crayons in half, breaking toys. He got on his bed one time and threw everything he could reach at us, just out of frustration and out of anger. And we were just had to be with them through love, and show them that you're not going anywhere. And guess what? We're not going anywhere. You're here. You are our son. There's nothing that you can do to change that. There's nothing that you're going to do that's going to make us mad and go, okay, no, you're done. We're dropping you off to another foster home. You are our son. And when that reality hit him, that's when we were able to just go forward as a family. And we haven't looked back since. I promise you, you guys have met me and just how much I talk about them and how much they've changed mine and Krista's life completely around. It's a complete blessing from God. And if you think about it from the beginning, when God decided to send Jesus down here, the Holy Spirit is with the Virgin Mary, and who adopted Jesus? Joseph. Jesus was adopted. Come on now.
I was about to say, like, you
Yeah,
just gave the full
it's
gospel
a perfect
message in your
picture
story
of
right
that.
there,
We were
brother. That was
talking
awesome.
before the podcast even and stuff. There was a time that I threw my hands up at Case and was like, God, why can he not get through his thick skull? And I have to tell him 100,000 times. And oh yeah, and the Holy Spirit kicked me. It was like, yeah, that's you big dummy. It was like, yeah, that's just like me, right? And you want to talk about the perfect adoption story.
It's
It's just
that's me.
God taking us in, and no matter what we do, he's there. And once you figure that out, just like when our kids figure that out as adopted kids, it changes everything. It's different. So.
And that brings me straight to Galatians 4, bro. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoptions as sons. And because you are sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, saying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. Like,
well, I promise you it's something special, and I know you guys know it because obviously we've all been through it. So to those of you guys out there, I'm telling you, talk about having a heart that feels like it's just so overwhelmed with the love of God for you, and you know that he's there. The love that you give these children and the love you get back, it's just a different feeling, and man, it just kind of makes your heart want to explode.
Thing. I mean, without getting into it, we all know, and you've heard us talk about it, and we're not gonna. There's no way I would ever beat up a state system and the foster care system, and it's just overwhelmed. I mean, it's just there's too many children that these foster care and care workers, they have, some of them have 50, 60, 70 kids they're looking after. But we went through, I think, 5 caseworkers, just in the short 1 year span with Kaysen. They're revolving constantly. I think Cody's been through a couple, and so I mean, it's just crazy. So all that said, if you go into this, don't go into it lightheartedly. You're not going in, and don't take this the wrong way, but you're not going to go in and look for a puppy. I mean, you're going into a serious relationship that, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of effort and a whole lot of patience. Patience that you never thought you had, because you're going to have it. And with all that said, it's worth every second of that you go through. Yep.
Worth it.
100%.
Worth it so much, I'm almost done with the song for them. Y'all will hear it next weekend. So before we go, any final thoughts from you guys on, just recap for the last 4 weeks? We had Soaring Wings. We had South Carolina Parent of the Year, Nikki and Travis Watson. And then just some doctrine of adoption with myself and Carl, and now just us, just having a conversation about our stories. So is there anything that you guys want some final thoughts on?
I just want to say, for those of you that have been listening and come along to each podcast and to listen to our stories, first of all, thank you for listening. The things that foster parents and people that have adopted kids, we all have stories. And you can just see, it brings tears to our eyes to talk about it sometimes. And I just want to thank you. And if you guys have any inkling at all in your heart for adoption, feel free to comment, and any of us would love to get back with you and answer any questions. That's something that I've been able to do with people from work, people from church that know that I have adopted children. They are so inquisitive about it. And sometimes it's just, that's the only thing keeping you from it, is just not knowing the whole process. Ask away, please, 100%. Just get on there, comment whatever you need to know, or we can get in touch with you. Be happy. Any of us would be happy to answer any questions, because it is such a blessing. And if there's any kind of inkling in your heart that you're thinking about doing it, pray over it. Pray that God's will be done through it.
Say, and I promise you that with is, one of the things we talked about with Andrew Watson and I, and we talked about the whole love aspect of it. And you will hear so many people say, well, you can't love an adopted child like you can your own child. We've all heard that. And all three right now will say that is wrong. In some ways, I love him and loved him more in some ways, because it's completely different. We're not biological. And when he reciprocated love back to me, oh my gosh. And so don't let that be a holdup. And then number two, we've been talking a lot about adoption this time, but foster care is so needed, because what better ministry are you going to have? Like Andrew and I talked about, you take children into your house, and if they do leave, they've had somebody that loved them enough that they're crying and heartbroken when they leave. That child's going to remember that you love them that much. And number two, while they're in your house, you're pouring the gospel into them. And so they leave with that as a seed going back into their parents' home. It's just such a beautiful picture of the gospel in so many ways. It is. And my wife and I have talked about, it's still a struggle with us. I mean, we're 3 years after the fact, but it's being talked about. I don't know what that looks like, but it changed us so much that we're talking about the future and what it looks like.
That's awesome, Jason.
That's awesome. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us at the fort. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to. And like Gunny and Jason said, myself included, if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out, fortironministries@gmail.com. Also, got a couple spots left for our October men's retreat. That's October 5th through the 8th, 2023. That'll be hosted at the Fort in Arkansas. So if you're interested, you can also find that at fortironministries.com. Thanks for hanging out with us at the Fort.
See you guys.